Okay, so the first part was about authenticity, what we spoke about early on. Oh, wait. And authenticity is what the word says it is, because you'll notice that I like the phonetic language, because to me language was spoken to be heard, not analyzed. And mostly what our relationship with language is a mental-body relationship. So when we want to know the meaning of a word, we go to a book and we look it up and find what the analysis of that word is, or what the description of that word is. So if you look at a word like beautiful, for example, if you want to know what beautiful means, you go to the Oxford English Dictionary and you go to B and you look up beautiful, and it says something that is appreciative, or it can be appreciated, or whatever it'll tell you. But if you listen to the word beautiful, it says beautiful. 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 Right? And the English language is full of words like that, because the English language is actually a very old language. It's also called the language of the birds. Comes from the language of the birds, but actually it's the language of the bards. And it's a language meant to be listened to. There's still many parts of the language that we can listen to. When we started speaking to each other, we didn't go write something down and show each other, right? We actually spoke and we listened, right? So when you hear the word authenticity, you can hear in it the word author. Author. Authenticity is about authorship. And in as much as I am the author of my experience, is in as much as I am authentic. Authenticity is about who is the author of this experience I'm having at the moment. And the first realization in authenticity is, it's definitely not me. Although I've just come, maybe I've been involved in a new age consciousness which says I create my reality, which is complete nonsense. Because if it was true that I created my reality, then I would know what was in your bag right now, because you're in my reality, and I should know what's in your bag because I created my reality. So actually, the idea that I create my reality is arrogant, if anything. It's the same consciousness that a cell takes on when it becomes what we call cancer. It goes around doing its own thing in the body, completely separate of all the other cells, because it creates its own reality, right? Actually, if anything, I co-create my experience of a reality, that is already unfolding, if we want to get closer to the truth. So first of all, we see that the experience that I'm having is actually an experience that is being determined by an energetic circumstance that was passed on to me before I was 7 years old, that came from my parents and my environment, that came from their parents and their environment, and onwards and onwards and onwards and onwards. And until I awaken from that, I see a teapot and a jar of cookies. And don't tell me otherwise, because it's right there in front of me, right? And while I see the teapot and the jar of cookies, I don't know, I'm completely unaware of myself outside that hypnotized state. I have no awareness of myself outside that state. All my awareness is within the hypnotized state. That's what's the only thing that's real to me. So the authenticity, the first part of the journey, the authenticity, is to see this first 7 years and the imprint, the impact of the imprint on my experience. And then once I see that, I then have a choice to take responsibility for it, which means to start to respond to that predicament. Right? Then the next level of the journey is about integrity. And integrity isn't a moral code. Like if we're in the mental body, integrity is like a Moses giving us like a whole lot of laws and going, okay, you obey these laws and you will have integrity. You just follow these all the time. You enforce this on every moment. Forget what's happening in the moment. Just enforce these laws and you'll have integrity. That's not what integrity is. Integrity has got to do with structure. This building has an integrity. And the integrity of this building is determined by the building materials being used for the right application. Because if we don't use the right building materials for the right application, the slightest deviation in weather condition, and this building will fall over. If we use glass, not for the windows, but for the foundations, you can be sure there's going to be a problem here, right? So integrity is about using the right building materials for the right application. In my experience, my experience is manufactured. It's not created. Everything that's created is already created, and we'll look at that later this evening. I cannot recreate what is created. Whatever's created has already been created. We got told heaven is already now at hand. It's created. But what I do is I manufacture an experience of that. And there's only 3 tools that I have to manufacture my experience: the emotional, the mental, and the physical. That's the trinity of the manufacturing process. And if I am going to the mental to do things that only the emotional is supposed to do, is able to do, I'm going to be out of integrity. Until I go to the emotional for the emotional, the mental for the mental, and the physical for the physical, I am going to be out of integrity. In other words, the slightest deviation in my experience and I get knocked over. I get upset. I only get upset in life because I'm out of integrity. That's all. So this part of the conversation we're going to have is about integrity, and we're going to move towards the next level of the journey, which we're going to spend most of tomorrow on, which is about intimacy. And intimacy is also what the word says, into me and see. Intimacy, into me and see. It's not into you and see. It's into me and see, right? And when we facilitate ourselves into an experience of intimacy, we'll realize that enlightenment is a mental concept. Enlightenment is a mental concept. The idea that there is this point of arrival, and that when I get there, there will be a firework display, followed by a ridiculous grinning, and knowing everything forever and ever. That is a mental concept, right? That's got nothing. That's the mental body trying to make something up because it can't feel what's real. It has no felt perception. So it makes stuff up. And our mental body has made up a lot of stuff. Most of it we call metaphysics. Metaphysics is the mental body's version of the vibrational. It's its desperate attempt to try and understand it. And metaphysics is useful as long as it's not our destination point. Right? So a way to look at that is this. When we enter the journey of awakening into responsibility, because it's about responsibility. Freedom is responsibility. Many of us were in the 60s, me excluded because I wasn't old enough, but in the 60s, freedom was having no responsibility. That was kind of the thing. If I don't have any responsibility, I'm free. But actually, when I don't take responsibility for my experience, somebody else does, and I'm no longer free. I'm only free when I'm 100% responsible for my experience. Right? So when I start awakening to my liberation, and liberation is emotional, it's not mental or physical. It's a movement from the physical through the mental into the emotional, but true liberation is emotional. I am only liberated when the imprint is no longer running my life, right? As I approach that experience, when I first awaken to it, it's like I'm in a restaurant. And in this restaurant, I have a plate of food in front of me, and I don't like this food. I have people sitting around me, and they annoy me, and they irritate me. I don't like it. There's a waiter standing next to me, and I'm shouting at the waiter for the quality of the food, even though I know the waiter doesn't cook. And I say, why does this keep happening to me? Why does this, right? And that's when I awaken to authenticity. And when I start awakening to authenticity, what I do is I get up from the table, I leave the waiter alone, and the people around me, and I go into the kitchen. I discover that there's a kitchen. And the kitchen is a very, very sexy place. Because the kitchen, there are ingredients, utensils, appliances, and the opportunity to become a master chef, right? And so I love being in the kitchen because I can cook things up, right? And lots of things happen in the kitchen. And the wonderful thing about the kitchen is where we learn about integrity. In other words, metaphysics, the intent of metaphysics is to teach us integrity. The only thing that rescues us from metaphysics as a destination is our integrity. Right? Integrity will rescue us from the kitchen because we will at some point realize that we need to serve this food. We've been cooking and cooking. And you know when you're in the kitchen, we know when we're in the kitchen, because we say, only read books about kitchen things. Only mix with people that are in the kitchen. And we're driving along to our kitchen meetings, and we say, look at the other people driving past us, and we go, when are these people going to wake up and come to the kitchen? You know? And that's when we're in the kitchen part of our journey. When we're trying out things, learning things. And what we're really doing in the kitchen is learning what is the emotional body for, what is the mental body for, but also we can become a chef, a master chef, and there's that whole, it's wonderful, the ego can get trapped in the kitchen. What rescues us from the kitchen is our integrity. Knowing that the food that we're cooking must be served. Not only must it be served, but it must disappear into nutrition and quiet conversation for it to fulfill its purpose. And that if I don't serve the food, if I just keep cooking and cooking and cooking, I'm going to overcook, right? In fact, if I stay in the metaphysical realm too long, I'm going to go mental. And we can see many people that have stayed in the metaphysical realm that go mental eventually, because it is the mental plane, right? And so when I awaken to my integrity, what I do is I leave the kitchen. I'm now aware that there's a kitchen and that I can go into the kitchen. I'm versed with the appliances, the ingredients, the utensils, right? I'm a master of being in the kitchen, but I do not identify myself by that. I leave the kitchen and I go back into the restaurant where I was sitting, and I sit back at that exact table I was at with the food in front of me, the people around me, and it may look like I'm in the exact same experience that I was when I started, but I'm not. Because I'm now no longer reacting to my experience, I'm responding to it. And that's a big difference. Now every aspect of my experience reveals itself to me as a divinely ordained possibility to see deeper into myself. Intimacy. I become more intimate with those around the table. I become more intimate with my food. I become more intimate with the waiter. It looks the same experience. In other words, before, chop wood and carry water. Afterwards, chop wood and carry water. The only difference is going from reaction and the world happening to me to response and the world happening through me, right? And once we get into that place, we enter the destination, and the destination is the journey. There is no destination. It's very hard for the mental body to cope with forever and ever, amen. Forever and ever, amen. It can't go there. It goes, but when do we get there? No, forever and ever and ever and ever. No, but how long will that take? Right? The mental body can't do that. It can't comprehend what is really going on here. The only part of us that can really comprehend it is a part of us that can feel forever and ever. Amen. And we have to tune into that part. And that's when the intimacy journey awakes. The intimacy journey awakes through felt perception. Intimacy is about a feeling. It's about a feeling. So now we go into the integrity part of the journey. And as we awaken into authenticity and become aware of our imprinting, and then choose to take responsibility for this, what we are going to do is reverse our journey along the pathway of awareness. And we all do this when we get involved in metaphysics, right? We just don't realize it. So for example, when we learn to meditate, right, the first thing that we're taught when we meditate is posture, physical posture, right? And once you've learned your physical posture, you get a mantra. You get something for mental navigation. So for example, if you want an awareness of your home, you may be given something like this. Home, 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 home. Whatever works, right? And it's meant to focus the mental body, right? And the intent is that we have an experience. And we only know we have an experience if we feel something. If we don't feel anything because we don't have felt capacity, we make it up. I've been channeling Archangel Michael. My macabre is a little bit out over here. We'll make stuff up. We'll make massive amounts of stuff up if we can't feel, right? If we can't feel. And if we try and barge our way into the vibrational without going through the emotional, if we go physical, mental, and into the vibrational, which it can be done, there are techniques to sedate and control the heart to such an extent that you can barge into the vibrational. And you've seen people that have done it. The guru who sleeps with the disciples. The person who enters vibrational awareness and then comes out with all this unintegrated behavior, right? Who starts buying hundreds of Rolls Royces. Weird behavior. And in fact, you will see it in any organization that regards itself as a spiritual organization that has not done the emotional body work. Hang around there for a while and see what's really going on, right? Because the emotional stuff will never go away. It's not meant to go away. It's meant to be transformed. It's part of our gems, our jewels. It's our jewels, right? So we travel from, our task is to enter emotional body awareness. It's not to make the spiritual happen. Anything we're doing to make a spiritual experience happening is delusional, because the only thing that is happening is a spiritual experience. The only thing that is real is that we're in the midst of the vibrational. But we may not have the capacity to perceive that or to contain an awareness of it. Our task is to develop the capacity to contain an awareness of it. It's already here, right? It's already here. We get told the kingdom of heaven is already at hand, right? For most of us, that's not a reality. It's the kingdom of boredom is now at hand, or whatever situation that we're in, right? So we can see also, for example, a shaman will also follow the pathway of awareness from the physical through the mental and into the emotional. Let's say Frank he's at the bar and he's telling his sad story. And the person behind the bar happens to be a part-time barkeeper, full-time shaman, right? And his name's actually Joe Crow, right? And he says to Frank, listen, Frank, let me help you out, brother. Why don't you come over to my place after this evening? In fact, come over tomorrow when you're not drunk, because you're a bit upset now. Come over to my place tomorrow, and I'm going to help you out, right? And if you go and see Joe Crow will follow the pathway of awareness. The first thing Joe Crow will do was get everything physically prepared, right? So they might make a fire and get some sage and cedar and feathers and all the physical stuff together and say to Frank, okay, now Frank, just sit over there, I'm going to help you out, brother, right? And then once the fire's going, throw some sage and cedar on and get some smoke going, and then into the mental, right? Say, oh, great spirit, my brother Frank, he's not feeling so good. I'd like to say some good words for him tonight. So help him feel better, right? And if I'm successful as a shaman, there will be a feeling, a movement in the heart. There will be a movement in the heart. And if I'm sitting there as Frank and I feel something, I'll go, Joe Crow, you're pretty good at this. I feel good. I feel something's changing here, right? Because I felt something. My emotional body has been impacted. Now, the evangelical churches know this. They might not know it consciously, but they know how to do it deliberately. Right? So if you go into an evangelical church, the first thing they do is they set up the physical stage, right? They'll have the band here and the things over there and the choir and everything's set up physically and the beautiful, everything's right. And then the band will start playing, right? Dun, 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 Jesus, Jesus, dun, 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 hallelujah, right? And once they're playing, then the priest will come out and do the mental, right? Jesus, 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 Jesus. And once everyone's like really worked up emotionally, he'll say, come and have a healing, right? Someone will come up there and, right? And someone may get up, they might be in a wheelchair and actually get up, whoa, check me out, right? Because if you can impact someone's emotional body, you can impact the quality of the experience almost immediately. It doesn't mean anything real has happened though. Because if you go and see that person a year later and see what's happened, they're back in the wheelchair, but now they've lost their faith. Because if you let someone mess with your emotional body, you're asking for trouble. Our emotional body is our responsibility. Our heart is our sole responsibility. S-O-U-L, our sole responsibility. No one else is in charge of our heart but us, right? So the first step in the journey, we're going to go from the physical, then we're going to go through the mental, and then we're going to enter the emotional. It's a deliberate procedure. That's what the presence process is. The presence process teaches us how to do that, right? And so the first thing is to get into the body. Now, if we're an adult in this world, we do not live in the body. It appears as if we do because wherever we go, it follows us around, right? So we assume we live in the body, but we don't. We live in the story. We live in the story. So many of us probably drove here tonight, right? Or when you go and drive anywhere, you can drive somewhere and you're saying, you know, Frank's got to get it together. You know, Frank, I just wish you would listen to me when I'm telling you. No, Frank. No, I'll tell you, Frank, exactly how it goes. Right? Right? And we're having this conversation in our head, right? About something. And then we suddenly get to our destination, and we have no recollection of how we got there. Right? And that's one of the proofs that there is a God. Because somebody's driving that car, and it's not us. It's called divine intervention, right? And if it wasn't for divine intervention, there would be cars piled up all over the place, right? Because for most of the time, we are not here. It's an amazing thing. We are not here. We're in the mental plane. If I think about my brother's a pilot, he flies in and out of Baghdad. If I think about him now flying in and out of Baghdad, that's where I am. I'm not here. I've gone there. Wherever I think. It's not I think, therefore I am. I think and therefore I'm over there. Right? I think it's called, we could all write books, you know, that Eckhart Tolle wrote a book on the power of now. We could all write a books called The Power of Elsewhere. Very easy, right? So the first thing we want to do is re-enter the body. That's the first step, right? And in the presence process, we use a very simple breathing technique to re-enter the body. You can use many ways to re-enter the body. The reason I chose breathing is because we all breathe. And we can all breathe, and there's nothing fancy about this breathing technique. It really is. Now, if we've been doing metaphysics, we're probably used to something like this. Right? Stuff like that, right? It's not like that. It's just breathing in and out. We are the only breathing creature that unconsciously disconnects its breathing between the in-breath and out-breath, that unconsciously pauses. If you watch a dog breathe, a dog goes, right? Watch someone on a telephone. Right? What's up? What? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Huh? Right? Because they're not there. The power of elsewhere. Right? Left the building. If you watch a dog get a fright, what does a dog do when it gets a fright? Right? Watch a human get a fright. All right? We have a disconnected breathing mechanism. So the reason we don't breathe is because we're not here. Breath only takes place in the moment. Breath only takes place now. There's no breath tomorrow. There's no breath yesterday. There's only breathing now. So if I'm not here, I'm not breathing. And we breathe about 12% of our waking state, we're breathing. And we use about 12% of our lung capacity. We're actually oxygen deprived, right? We're oxygen deprived. So the first step is to spend some time breathing. And in the presence process, we just do it for 15 minutes twice a day. And let me tell you what, that's enough. Showing up or attempting to show up for 15 minutes twice a day is hard work. Anyone who's done this will know how hard it is to be here for 15 minutes. Because our greatest addiction is to be elsewhere. It's very difficult to be here now, right? What happens when we anchor ourselves and connect our breathing and stay in this moment is by holding myself here, I will start to become aware of where I'm running away to. Those places that have been getting my attention. You see, when I go into that moment of resistance, right, as a child, and I go from spontaneous movement into resistance, in that moment, that energy doesn't move anymore and there's friction. And a part of my attention hooks into that. And that part of my attention stays there until it's integrated. That part of my attention stays there and says, what happened? What's happening here? How can I stop this happening again? What's happening? How can I stop this? What's happening? It creates a past and a future. But a part of our awareness hooks in there and it doesn't leave until that stops. And that's why we're not here. Actually, most of us is still in the child place, hooked into various instances of this going on, right? Most of our attention is there. We're addicted to going there. So when we hold ourselves in the moment deliberately, what happens is some of these places are not going to get our attention, and they're going to start rattling, right? They're not getting our attention. And the way they're going to come up into our awareness is not as the emotional states that they are, because we're physically transfixed beings. The way that they come up into our attention is through pain and discomfort. You sit down and hold yourself in the moment for 15 minutes and hold yourself there. You will start having physical experiences, whether it's tingling, whether it's hot and cold, whether it's itchiness, whether it's pains that you didn't know were there. But you will start having certain things happen to you that you will associate with pain and discomfort. And when that starts arising, it's at that moment we have to mentally make a shift about what compassion is. About what compassion is. In the mental plane, in the metaphysical world, we believe compassion is doing something, right? So when I go around helping everybody, I'm a compassionate person. Actually, when I go around helping everybody, it's because I feel helpless, and my helplessness is reflected in the world around me, and so I go around cleaning the mirror to get rid of the pimples, right? And I go around giving vices to everyone else, right? Here, have some advice for you, advice for you. And if I go around doing that behavior, I may think that I'm a compassionate person. But compassion is not a state of doing. There is no doing in compassion at all. Compassion is a resonance, it's a frequency, it's a vibration actually. It's a vibrational state called being. Being, right? And so the way that many of us were brought up is like this. A child comes into the room and it's angry. Right? If I am an adult and I haven't integrated my anger, right, the last thing I want is a reflection of my anger around me. So what I'll say is, don't be angry, here, have a sweet, go and play outside, or go to your room until you behave yourself, right? I will stop that anger in that, and what's happening is this anger is an energy in motion. It's like, and what happens is it gets stopped, right? And my attention gets hooked into it. And even though I'm told to go outside and play, part of my awareness that hooks into it will never go and play again until that is integrated. that part of me won't be able to play. Right? So that's the way many of us were brought up. That's the type of way that we call it discipline in the world, right? Now, it's different if the adult has integrated their anger. For example, let's say I've integrated my anger, and a child comes in who's angry, right? And I've integrated my anger. I'll say, oh, that's interesting, you're angry. Something must have made you angry. I'll tell you what, you be angry, and I'll be with you while you're angry. I'll be with you. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to interfere about your condition. Interfere with you. Right? I'm not going to interfere. Because whatever's happening to you is valid. Your anger is valid. Now, in that moment, we're either going to respond or react to it. Let's respond to it. You be angry, and I'll be with you. And if you be with an angry child, what will happen is that anger will peak. It'll get worse. And suddenly there'll be tears. There'll be crying, and the crying will move through emotion because it's energy in motion. And then crying will stop, and the child will come to a state of peace and quiet. And if you just stay with the child during that, eventually the child will get up and go and play anyway. Right? And their awareness will not be hooked into that event. It won't exist anymore. It'll be integrated. Right? Because it can only be integrated through compassion. Compassion is what the word says, the phonetic language, the language of the birds, right? Come, pass on. Compassion. You can come to me, and I won't interfere with you, and I'll allow you to pass on. Come, pass on. I'm not going to do anything, right? So when we ourselves sit ourselves down and intend to become aware where our emotional bodies are unintegrated, the last thing we want to do is try and help ourselves. Right? The last thing we want to do is sedate and control the moment I start feeling, because when we start feeling in this world, we go and tell someone, I'm feeling kind of weird. I wonder if you can help me, right? And the last thing we want to do when we start feeling something is to try and help ourselves. What we want to do is rather be with ourselves as we are, being without condition on it, going, I'm going to be with you, because what is that part of myself that's coming up into my awareness? It's just the same as that child standing out there. It's no different. It's the 7-year-old and younger. And it's coming up in my awareness. In fact, whenever I get upset, and there's no exception to the rule, whenever I get upset, that is a visit from my child. And however I behave in that moment determines whether I'm responding or reacting to that child. And if I stay with that child and I be with it, say if I'm feeling really angry, and I'm sitting there, I'm doing my breathing, and I start to feel really angry, or I start to feel very uncomfortable in my body and itchy, and I just be with it and allow it to be there. It will go to a point of resolution if I leave it alone. If I try and mess with it, I can release it, because there's a difference between emotional release and emotional resolution. Emotional release looks like this. Okay, I'm feeling angry, so my anger is black, barbed wire dripping with blood, and I'm going to turn it into balls of angelic light, and then I'm going to go to my happy place, sit there for a while, right? That, I'm going to move it through my chakras, right? That is called interference. That's the metaphysical world, right? We don't want to interfere with our emotional body. All we do all day long is sedate and control it and manipulate it so we feel feelings we'd rather be feeling than what we're feeling now. We want to stop all that behavior. And the moment we anchor ourselves in this body, we are going to have a physical awareness arise up as to the condition of our emotional body. And it'll first come for most of us as a physical awareness because we are physically transfixed beings. We relate to our world as a world in which everything matters. Everything matters. It's funny, that everything matters to us. Because when a child is born, watch a baby, right? In the first period of its life. Watch its eyes. Wow, right? And we put something over its crib, right? It's just like goes round and round. It's going, whoa, man, wow, wow, right? It's like it took a big dose of LSD, right? Everything is moving. Why? Because it's energy in motion. Energy in motion, right? And then the funny thing is, we grow up as adults, and then we get all mental, and we develop these big telescopes to look into matter, and we stare deep into matter, and we say, it's moving! It really moves! Look, it really, right? What happened between then and now? The state of hypnosis, right? This is what we want to awaken from, the state of hypnosis. When we sit with ourselves in a state of compassion, what we're saying is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be with it anyway. No matter what. I'm going to be with myself no matter what. Not easy. The hardest thing you will ever attempt. To be with yourself no matter what. So the first level is to realize that if we're going to do this work, we better realize what compassion is. Compassion is being with myself without placing conditions on what's happening. Right? That's the first step. The next step is to gain some level of mental clarity. And the mental clarity is very simple. Mental clarity is this. My emotional body is the causal point of the quality of my experience. My emotional body, the condition of my emotional body, is the causal point of the quality of my experience. And only I am responsible for the condition of my emotional body. That's all mental clarity is. Once you get that mentally, the mental body's work is over. There's some other parts you can do, but that's over. There's nothing more to understand than that. Just get on with the work. But getting to that level of realization, you can't get it just because I tell you. You have to realize it through experience. You see, the mental body believes that information is knowledge. It believes that if I take a book and I read it, I know something. It believes that if I go and study out of books for 4 years, I actually know something. Because it believes that the mental realm and information is knowledge. Information isn't knowledge. In the phonetic language, information is what it says. We're using information here tonight so that we can move in formation with each other. Information is to move information with each other. That's all. Knowledge comes from entering an integrated physical, mental, and emotional experience. And having a physical, mental, and emotional encounter with what it is we want to know something about. Not just having a mental encounter. When we're sitting reading a book, it's just a mental thing. Right? So it's very important we give ourselves an experiential encounter with the realization that the emotional body is the causal point of the quality of our experience. In the first 6 weeks of the presence process, that is all we're doing. We're giving ourselves an opportunity to have this experience. And that's what we're going to look at tomorrow morning in more detail. But what this looks like is this. If I leave an experience and I feel good about it, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what physically happened or what mentally went on. If I leave feeling good, it was a good experience. Because the feeling is the causal point. If I leave an experience and I feel terrible about it, it doesn't matter what happened physically or mentally in that experience. It doesn't matter. If I feel terrible, it was a terrible experience. The feeling is the causal point. It's the causal, everything that we're attracted to, whether we realize it or not, it's not because of what we think about it or the physicality of it. It's because of the feeling we believe that we get. The feeling is the causal point of everything. Right? Look at advertising. What is advertising? You feel alive, drink this water. This water will make you feel something. In fact, this water, you drink this water, you'll feel sexy. Right? That's what advertising is. Advertising is saying, you buy this, you can have the feeling associated with it. Right? And the thing is, you buy it, and you may temporarily have the feeling. But because the feeling comes to you from outside, it won't last. So I'll have to throw it away and go and get something else now. So I can buy my new car, and it feels good. It feels good because everyone stands around the car and goes, wow, you got a new car. That's really groovy, and I feel good, right? And after a couple of weeks, no one notices my new car anymore. It doesn't feel so good to be in that car. I need a new model because I'm unable to give that feeling to myself. It's coming from outside of me. How do you think politics works? How do you think politics works? What is a political strategist? A political strategist is a master of the emotional realm and says to the candidate, you will discuss this issue, then you will discuss this issue, and then you will discuss this issue, and then you will discuss this issue. And if we time it right, if we press the right buttons in the right order, you're in the White House. And that's why you can ask a political candidate a question. Excuse me, what is your feelings about immigration? Oh, blah, 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 nothing, blah, blah, nothing, avoidance, blah, blah, nothing, right? And you go back a month later and you ask, what are your feelings about immigration? Well, actually, let me tell you about immigration, what my policy is. I'm now going to discuss in absolute detail because my political strategist has told me I can talk about immigration now. It's time to press that button, right? What is politics? About feelings, right? Who do we vote for? The person who makes us feel good. Or the person who makes us feel really bad. Depends on what's going on, right? At the moment, people are feeling really good, so they're leaning towards somebody. But if there was a big bomb in this country, people would feel really scared, they would lean towards somebody else. It's as simple as that. That's why I'm saying liberation is emotional. Only when I'm responsible for my own emotional body am I not dragged around by a leash by the outside world, tapping on the emotions. What is a box office movie? A movie that's the #1 movie is the movie that pushes the right feeling. And you'll know that certain feelings are bubbling up in the collective unconscious because you'll see movies come out in groups. Watch movies. You'll have 4, 5, or 3 or 4 movies come out on the same theme at the same time because they know that's the feeling in the market at the moment. You can press that button. You got a #1 movie. Right? It's all about the feeling. And the thing is, only I am responsible for my feelings. And it's very easy to see that. You can phone me up and ask me to house sit for you. And I can do physical things for you. I can take out the trash, feed the dog, water the plants. You can phone me up to house sit for you and I can do mental things for you. I can answer the phone and talk to people. I can do research for you while you're gone. I can even go to a court of law and speak on your behalf and mentally communicate on your behalf. But you cannot phone me and ask me and tell me that you're going out of town and say, Michael, while I'm gone, will you feel for me? Because no one can feel for you. And because no one can feel for you, no one can heal for you. And when you really get that, you're home free. Because healing the emotional body requires feeling the emotional body. The imprint is only impacted through felt awareness. Not someone else's, our own felt awareness. Our own felt awareness. Once we get that realization set in there, then we're ready to begin the work. Then the physical and the mental is over. Then the physical world is simply a mirror that I can use to reflect my discomforts, and the mental body is simply a list of stories that I can use to pull up certain emotional signatures, and I can use those two to pull up certain emotional signatures, and once the signature is up, my task is to be with it without condition. It's as simple as that, right? But that's where the journey begins. And remember, we said there are only 3 aspects to the emotional body that we need to look at: fear, anger, and grief. And remember, we said that fear is related to the physical, and anger is related to the mental, and grief is directly related to the emotional. And for that reason, when we enter the emotional body, we move backwards along the pathway of awareness from physical to mental to emotional, from fear into the anger, into the grief. And it's the fear is the key. Fear is also the keeper of the door. Because the reason why there are more people at political rallies tonight and in sports arenas than there are sitting around a conversation like this is because of one thing only: fear. Because when we choose to take responsibility for our emotional condition, the very first thing that's going to come up as we enter our emotional body is fear. And if we're not, I will not face my fear for you. I will not face and feel my anger for you. I will not face my grief for you. I will only face it when my heart allows me to. The heart runs the show, not the mental body. Remember that we live in a world where the mental body has become God, to such a point that we say thought creates. I think, therefore I am. The most, right? I think, therefore I am. You know what the thinking guy? Still sitting there, nothing's ever happened, right? And thought creates. The idea that thought creates, if you just contemplate that for a moment and see how ludicrous that is. Thought creates. Are you trying to tell me that God is a thought? Because that's what that says. Thought doesn't create. Thought is part of the manufacturing process of the experience we're currently having. But it doesn't create anything. Everything that was created is already created. Right? So to realize that, we want to realize that experientially is about going into the emotional body. And the moment we say, I'm going to enter the emotional, I'm going to enter my emotional body and experience what's going on there and feel what's going on there, so I can feel it like being with the child, so that the child can, its anger can peak and then cry and then go to peace. That's what's going to happen within my own emotional body. When I'm with my emotional conditions, they're going to go through an organic unfolding. The thing about the emotional body is we associate emotion with water, the element of water, and emotion, the moon, all these are related. And the reason we associate water and emotion, and we call it the ocean of emotion, our ocean, and the ocean being the emotional body of the planet, and our blood being the emotional liquid that moves through our bodies, right? The reason why we associate emotion with water is because they behave the same. If I pour this water over your head, I promise you I won't need to give it a GPS system for it to find the ground. It knows how to find the ground. If a spring comes out of the earth, it doesn't need a navigational tool and a Google map to find the ocean. If you leave that spring alone, it will find the ocean. It has its own intelligence. It's the same with our emotional states inside of ourselves. Our task is to release our hold on them. To stop doing this. The moment I stop doing that and I let it go, it will just flow to a point of resolution. It knows what to do. It has its own intelligence. My task is just to be with it without condition, take the conditions off and allow it to flow. And the moment I do that, I will enter a journey that takes me through my fear, my anger, and my grief. And there are many levels of this journey. Many levels. For example, if I haven't integrated my fear, I will not be able to be discerning about anything. I can't discern. Because a person who's afraid, whenever anything unfamiliar happens, they run. Energetically, they run. A frightened person runs. And you can't discern something unless you can stand still and be with it. And then you can discern what's appropriate. So until I'm able to sit in my fear and be with it, I can't practice discernment in my life. In fact, fear, my integrating of fear, develops the capacity for discernment. It's the same with anger. While I haven't integrated my anger, I either become depressed and paralyzed, or I become aggressive. But I can't assert myself in the world. I don't have the capacity to assert myself. Only when I'm able to sit in the energy of anger and be with it can I assert myself. And unless I can assert myself in the world, there is no movement in my life, in many aspects of my life. And we'll look at that in a moment. It's the same with my grief. If I'm unable to sit in my grief and be with it without doing and messing with it, then I can't feel deeply without falling over. Whenever anything comes up for me to feel deeply, I just fall over. I lose balance. But if I'm able to be with my states of grief without condition and to be with it, then I will be able to feel really deeply without falling over. And let me tell you what I am is a really deep feeling. What God is a really deep feeling. Where we are is a really deep feeling. If I don't integrate my grief, I won't be able to feel that without falling over. That's what it says. Blessed are those who mourn, for they are comforted. In other words, only when I get to the point of integrating my grief, I've gone through the fear, anger, and grief, do I answer those three questions. What am I? Where am I? And what is God for me? And that's the comforting part of it. That's what comforts me, right? So the thing about the fear, anger, and grief is this. It's very simple. When I'm sedating my fear, anger, and grief, and this is all you need to get about the emotional body, although there are many levels and we'll look at those tomorrow. When I'm sedating, unconscious to my awareness, I'm sedating my fear, I'm sedating my anger, and I'm sedating my grief, the imprints of my childhood. I'm not allowing myself to feel those conditions. I'm simultaneously not allowing myself to feel. That's what shuts down my feeling body. Sedation of fear, anger, and grief. When I allow myself to feel my fear and I sit in my fear, I will know what I'm most afraid of. My anger. Do you know how really angry we are at standing still with only one toe moving? It makes us angry. We don't even know how angry we are. We're living in one of the angriest countries in the world. This country. Right? Except what we do is we send the anger over somewhere else. Right? Think about it this way. In this country, you're allowed to be afraid. Be very, very afraid. In fact, you can test this out. You're allowed to be afraid and you're allowed to be sad, but you're not allowed to be angry. You can go to an airport and test this out. Go into an airport and act afraid. I'm really scared. I saw someone with a backpack and it looks really suspicious and I'm really scared. And I'll go, don't worry, we'll sort it out. Here, have a tablet, have some medication. You'll be fine, right? You can go into an airport and be really sad. I'm really sad about the state of the country and the gas price and everything. I'm really sad about it. They go, don't worry, you've got something, a medication for you, everything will be fine, right? But go into an airport and be angry. You'll be lucky if you get out alive. Because you're not allowed to be angry in this country. Anger is not allowed. The only place anger isn't allowed is when it's exported elsewhere. Right? But anger is so important. Anger is the most powerful friction we have access to. And the thing about friction is this. Friction is actually very useful when it's conscious. Because a train's wheels need friction to grip on the rail so the train can move, just as it needs friction to apply brakes so that it can stop. Friction is not a problem. It's the unconscious use of friction that's a problem. Right? When we haven't integrated our fear, anger, and grief, what we can't see when we don't have felt perception is where this is in our lives. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Anywhere in our life where we cannot make decisions, anywhere in our life where we cannot make decisions, I can't decide. That's our fear. That's an external manifestation of the fear that is unintegrated internally. Anywhere in our life, in our experience, where there is no movement, where things are just stuck, whether it's relationship, finances, it doesn't matter where it is, where there's no movement, that's where our anger is manifesting. That's an outer manifestation of our anger. Anywhere in our life where we say, I'm sorry, I have nothing to do with that. I'm not dealing with that. Don't even bring that up around me. I don't even, no, nothing to do with that. That's our grief. That's our grief. And when we allow those states within us to come to our awareness and move to resolution, those experiences outside of us automatically begin moving. They move through being without condition, not doing unto. That's what alchemy is about. When I allow my anger to move internally, and come to a point of, and we'll look at that in more detail tomorrow, what that experience is really like. But when I allow my anger to move to resolution internally, I will notice things outside of me in the world that have been stuck, finances, relationship stuff, whatever that has been blocked and not moving, will suddenly start moving. Because now I'm not cleaning the mirror to get rid of the pimples. I'm looking in the mirror and making the adjustment internally. So that's one of the levels, but there's a deeper level. There's a deeper level about this work. When we started speaking tonight, and this is where we'll finish tonight, we're speaking about the man crawling around in the street, looking for a key that he had lost under a street light, because he'd lost it at home, but he wasn't looking there because the lights were out. We actually believe in this world that we have to make peace. We do. That's how delusional we've become, right? That we have to make peace. Peace was created. Peace is of the vibrational. Peace is a vibration, right? So we have certain ways that we go about making peace. And we can best see the way we make peace by watching our leaders. Because although our leaders annoy us, they annoy us because they reflect us. We're not going to have leaders that don't reflect us. It doesn't work that way. Our leaders reflect us. And this is how our leaders behave. If we want to make peace, they behave one or two ways. Either they're going to impact it physically or mentally, because there's no emotional awareness, right? So first of all, impacting it physically looks like this. All of you shut up and sit still. And if you don't shut up and sit still, I will send someone to shut you up and sit you still so that we can be at peace. Right? That's called making peace. Right? That comes out of the belief that peace is a physical circumstance. And if we rearrange the physical circumstances on the planet, there will be peace. But there's never been peace from rearranging physical circumstances, because peace is not a physical circumstance, although it can be expressed as such. But you don't make peace through physical circumstance. That's the behavior of insanity, of that person who's been in a mental institution, right? Another way we make peace is this. You bring your peace manifesto, and I'll bring my peace manifesto, and we will discuss it until we come to a point of agreement. And once we agree on one manifesto, we will sign that manifesto in front of the media, and hallelujah, there'll be peace. But there's never been peace that way, because peace isn't a mental concept. You don't get to peace by agreement. Peace isn't real because we agree it is. Peace is a vibration. And that vibration can only be known if it's felt. We feel at peace. We don't do at peace or think peace. We feel at peace. Peace already exists. The whole of Iraq is engulfed in peace. Take all the people away and you'll see how peaceful it is. There is nothing but peace there. It's not that there's not peace there, it's what is obscuring the realization of the peace that's already there. The peace is already given. Heaven is now at hand. We just have to develop the capacity to realize it. And this is the thing. This is the most profound thing. Each of us have the exact amount of fear, anger, and grief within us. The exact amount, down to the exact amount. Right? That when we allow ourselves to feel fully without condition, to be without condition, allowed to be and move, will awaken our felt perception. Our anger, when I feel my anger and I allow myself to feel it, and I don't go into the story and the behavior, I just allow that energy to be there and I feel it fully, it wakes up a whole vast aspect of my felt awareness, my felt perception, my vocabulary, the letters of the felt perception alphabet. And when I allow myself to feel my grief, I wake up more letters of my felt perception. And when I allow myself to feel my fear, I wake up more letters of my felt perception. And my felt perception wakes up fully. And as I wake my felt perception up, now what? I can feel the vibrational. Because only felt perception can engage with the vibrational. If I really want to know what I am, I have to feel it. Can't understand it. Because anything about the mental body has a beginning and an ending. The mental body, look at your mental body. Whenever you turn it towards anything, it has a structure, a beginning and an ending. A space in which it fits, an understanding. How long it takes. What we are is beyond that. The only part of us that can realize that which has no beginning and ending is the part of us that can feel. When the felt perception is awakened, it's easy to feel. It's easy to feel that although I'm 46 years old, I can't remember being born. I can't remember a beginning. I can't feel the beginning. I can't feel an end. If I can awaken my feeling body. And once I awaken my felt perception, I will realize that love, that vibrational without conditions upon it, is a feeling. That life is a feeling. That gratitude is a feeling. That peace is a feeling. That everything that I'm seeking to accomplish through the outside world, through all my doings, is accomplished through feeling. And that my being in the world is not about trying to do things so that I can feel something, is actually to express what I am feeling from the vibrational. It's very different to express my being vibrationally in the world. Not to come and do something so that I feel better. This is not about feeling better. This is about getting better at feeling. All right. And that's my story, and I'm going to stick to that one for a while. So tomorrow, what we're going to look at is, when I apply this principle of being without condition to my experiences, there is a radiance. And that's why it's not about making peace in the world, it's about realizing it while I'm here. Because when I realize it, it begins to radiate in my experience. And what does that look like? And so first of all, it's intimacy with myself. Then it's intimacy with my family, because the family is a very deliberate experience. That we're born into a family for a deliberate reason. Our family are ascended masters, all of them. Ascended masters of button pushing. And they're there for a reason, right? And then there is a deliberateness in coming together with another human being. And it's not about getting married and turning them into our parents, right? There's another level of work that we can do with another human being on this radiance of intimacy, so that we first become intimate with ourselves, then intimate with our family, then intimate with one other human being, one stranger. And only then are we qualified to become intimate with what God is. If we think we can be intimate with what God is when we can't be intimate with ourselves, or we can be intimate with what God is when I can't sit in peace with my birth family, or I think I can be intimate with God when I can't be truly intimate with one other human being, it's a little arrogant. So there is a radiance to this work. Right? And we're going to look at that and explore what the potentials of it are tomorrow. And by the time you leave here tomorrow, you won't need the Presence Process or Alchemy of the Heart, although it's great if you read those books. But I'll make sure that you'll leave tomorrow knowing what this work is and how to do it. Right? It's really important that you leave here knowing how to do it. So, not bad for 1 hour sleep. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And for those of you not coming tomorrow and have books that you would like me to sign, more than happy to do that.